Hi, this is Brianna with my shadowing reflection for EDAD 608 and 696. My biggest three takeaways from my shadowing experience was 1, that discipline takes time, 2, there's a lot of different things to think about when disciplining a student, and 3, that discipline needs to be consistent and fair the whole school year. My first big takeaway was that discipline takes time. During my shadowing opportunity, my principal had to deal with a major cyberbullying issue on campus. One other student had been cyberbullying another student through Facebook Messenger, and it had come to light in the classroom. During my shadowing opportunity, I watched my principal handle this, and it took almost 3.5 hours of the school day. Between talking to the two main students involved, as well as any witnesses and students from the classroom and hearing all stories, also talking to the parents of the students who were involved, talking to the school counselor, the school resource officer, and also contacting district office to determine correct discipline issues, my principal's entire day was focused on this matter. And any other school business had to be set aside or passed off to the vice principal. For discipline to be handled properly, I do believe that the discipline needs to take time. All sides of the stories from students need to be heard and an understanding come to before doling out a discipline. My second big takeaway was that there's a lot to think about when it comes to discipline. It's not just listening to a story or listening to a teacher say what the student did and bam, there's a discipline, but that a principal must balance school rules, district policies, state and federal laws, and take into account all of those all the time when disciplining a student and making sure that they're following all legal, ethical, and moral codes when handing out a discipline. During my shadowing, I was able to talk to principals about suspensions and expulsions and also due process when it comes with that. A principal and a school can suspend or expel when students break certain ed codes. After breaking the ed codes and determining either a long-term suspension or an expulsion, a parent and a student has a right to go through due process and have a hearing determining if this is correct or not. During that hearing, students are given the right to know what specific rules were violated, so showing ed code on what the students did wrong, have the decision regarding the suspension to be heard by a third party of 3 or more members, which in our district, it goes to our school board in a closed session where they determine if the student will be held for long-term suspension or expulsion. The student is allowed to bring evidence and witness on their behalf. Also, they are allowed to bring legal counsel to determine if the suspension or expulsion will be upheld. My last big takeaway was that discipline needs to be consistent to the whole school year. I did a lot of comparing when watching my principal and vice principal discipline from what I saw them do in September to what I saw them do in May. And one of the big things I noticed was that they had a lot less patience for different misbehaviors. Things that they may have counseled a student through in September were now just an immediate detention or suspension in May. And I felt that sends mixed messages to the students that I can get away with it in September, but not in May. And I think the major thing to do is make sure that discipline and consequences are consistent throughout the school year, that there's no change in patience, there's no change in what a student expects. If I follow this action, if I make this choice, this is a consequence I'm going to be expected to receive. And it should not change from beginning of the school year to the end of the school year.